Good morning. Today is our first full day here in Dubrovnik. We have a walking tour scheduled at 12. It's now 11, so we're just gonna walk around and just check out the old town while we wait for our tour. This is one of the two main gates into Old Town. It's called Pile Gate, and it's just a few steps from our hotel, so it's very convenient. So you'll see a lot of people walking through here. When we first walked by, we thought it was the entrance to the city walls, but it is not. It's public. You can just walk through it. So let's go. Now we've come down the steps, and to my right is the entrance to the city wall. We'll be back around 4, and behind me is the main pedestrian walkway. It has been a pedestrian walkway for like a very long time. Of the old town. It's called the Strada. All of the roads in the old city all lead to this road.
Normally this whole street, this whole area, especially now, it's like 11:30 almost, and typically this area will be full of tourists because there's a lot of a lot of cruise ships that dock in Dubrovnik, and then so during the middle of the day, all the cruise ship passengers disembark and are here in Old Town, but right now there's no cruises. That's why this Old Town area is a lot less busy than it normally otherwise would be. So it's actually a perfect time to come because, you know, there's people here visiting, but it's not a whole bunch of people like super crowded or anything. Now walk through the middle of the town, and we're now here at the harbor area. So behind us, above the hills, and all these little boats that you can actually charter out. And then there's a ferry over to Lokrum Island as well that takes off from here. We're now back at the fountain, which is the meeting point of the city tour. But apparently you can drink this water that's coming out of this fountain. But I mean, this thing is like from the 1300s.
So we just finished our walking tour. It's called Walking Tours of Dubrovnik. And it was very good. Our tour guide, her name was Ivana. She was just very good. So there were only 4 of us total, and so it was pretty much a private tour. She just took us through the old town and told us about the history of the old town, why there are city walls. She also told us about the War of Independence that happened in the 90s. So Croatia has only been independent for 30 years.
Dubrovnik used to be an independent republic for over 500 years. It was called the Republic of Ragusa. They were independent of Croatia, of all the other countries around, and they were actually enemies of Venice. This was mostly constructed by the Republic of Ragusa from around the 13th century to the 17th century. In the 17th century, there was a huge earthquake where pretty much 3/4 of the entire city was destroyed. And so all the buildings around here, they were rebuilt in the Baroque style in the 17th century. And there was actually one church down there where I was climbing up on that stone that was an old building that survived the earthquake. And the city walls was finished construction in the 17th century, and that actually withstood the earthquake. This used to be a canal of water, but then they filled it in, and now it's like the main pedestrian street, main thoroughfare in the city.
One of my good friends is from Serbia, so I've always been fascinated by the history of these Slavic countries. This whole area used to be Yugoslavia. So Yugoslavia was made up of several territories: Serbia, Kosovo, Macedonia, Bosnia, Croatia,
Montenegro, Slovenia.
Yes. There was a war in the 90s. Basically, what we're understanding is Serbia was the aggressor trying to invade other territories. Croatia declared their independence, and that's what started the war. And so the war lasted 4 years. What resulted was all of these 6 different countries. Yugoslavia had like all these different territories, and now they're separate countries. The only thing is Kosovo didn't exist before. It was part of Serbia, and now it's its own country.
During the war, apparently UNESCO had come and put up white flags all around the city walls to say, hey, look guys, this is a UNESCO heritage site. It's a historical site to be protected. unfortunately, it was not respected. So there was all these bombs from the fortress. They were lobbing bombs over, and the city was under siege for a long time, for years. Actually, our tour guide was saying she was born actually during the war, and when she was born in the hospital, in the basement of the hospital, and her parents lived without water, electricity, anything like that for years during the war, which is kind of crazy. She's 28, so she was born literally like at the beginning of the war, and so she was 3 when the war ended, which is kind of crazy because it hasn't been that long. This street, there was 45 bombs that were dropped along this street, so it was completely reconstructed.
One of the most interesting things we found out is that Croatia only has 4 million residents, and last year in 2019 there were over 20 million tourists. So normally this street would be filled with tourists, like 10,000 a day. She wouldn't normally bring her guests down the street because you can't stop anywhere, but she brought us down here. We were able to stop. Really, this is the best time we could have ever come here, and I don't think we'll experience anything like this again. We're very happy with our decision to come here.
We've now made it to the top of the cable car. So a good tip is that I didn't realize we could actually drive up here. So our tour guide provided that little tip. So we drove up to the top of where the cable car goes, and there's a little restaurant up here called Panoramic. But the road up here is a little treacherous. It's a single road, or single lane road. Kind of interesting road up here, but yeah, pretty cool. We saved ourselves like 25 bucks. A person, yeah. The cable car up and down is like 160 kuna. Good tip is to just drive up here.
If you have a car.
If you have a car. If you have a car, drive up here. It only took about 10-15 minutes from our hotel down in Dubrovnik to drive up here.
I don't feel like the view is worth $25 per person, especially if you have a family. Like, you're paying $100
That's
for
a
a family
lot.
tour to come out here. I mean, it's cool. It's definitely cool to see the walls of the old city and see it from above.
If you look on a map, there's a little section of Croatia is separate from the rest of Croatia, and that's owned by Bosnia. The reason why there's a little section separate because when they were being invaded, the Venetians were coming down. The Ottomans were basically the republic's protectors. At that time, they said, hey, look, we'll give you this little area so then you can basically protect us from the invading army. So they gave that little area to then the Ottoman Empire. So that's why that little section of Bosnia is now owned by Bosnia instead of Croatia.
So it splits Croatia into two.
So basically now, if you want to go by land from Dubrovnik up to, say, for example, Split, you have to cross 2 borders. And sometimes during the peak summer months, it could take up to 3 hours to cross the border from one side, and then you drive 10 miles or like 10-15 minutes, and then you have to wait again to cross again. But now apparently they're building a bridge that's gonna connect from the island to the mainland. Tomorrow we're gonna have to make that drive and then get on the ferry, drive a little bit, get another ferry to go back on the mainland.
We just paid for our tickets to get on the city wall. It's 200 kuna a person. Got our tickets, so we'll climb up and get scanned in. We just got up to the top. It's one direction only, and you go counterclockwise, so we'll hit the C portion first, and then you exit where you started. Well, you can exit sooner, but to make the full loop, you exit where you started.
So right here is the old roofs, and if you see back there with the more orange roofs back there, those are the new ones. Right now there's almost no people on this wall. Obviously, if you look behind, there's just a few people on here with us on this wall. But during the high season, regular times, non-COVID times, in the morning and midday, this whole place would be basically just packed, back to back with people.
Yeah, because the cruise ships drop off the passengers and then they have to be back on the boat by like 4 or 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
So they're the ones who are on the wall in the middle of the day.
So either go super early or do it like we do it, like an hour and a half before they close, which is the perfect time. You can see the fortress in the back, and then you can get a bird's eye view of the old city kind of behind me like that. So yeah, quite nice. A good amount of stairs, but not too bad.
This is beautiful. What a cool time to be here.
We made it up to the very top of the C portion of the wall. views from this side over the cliffs and the fortress, awesome. And it's just so quiet right now. There's like nobody. We kind of have this whole city wall to ourselves almost. Right now we're just kind of just chilling out and relaxing up here. Really, really nice up here. We're now here on the mountain side of the wall, and back there it totally looks like you're in this fairy tale like movie setting. It looks like a movie set, which it is. So that's really cool. I mean the seaside was cool, but this side looks pretty. I like this side a lot better. Now made the full loop around the city walls. Excellent hour and a half up here. Like Melissa said, pretty much there was maybe 10 other people that we saw up here at any time. So amazing views up here, especially kind of right here at like twilight, golden hour. Really, really nice. We were hoping to see a sunset tonight, but I think there's a little too many clouds up in the sky.
You could also keep going and try to catch the sunset from up here.